In a cave in France beneath the Somme lies the underground city of Naours. The walls of this city are lined with the signatures of thousands of French and Australian soldiers from World War I. So how does a high school in Bundaberg play a part in piecing this story together? Michael and Donna Fechner have written a book called The Silent Soldiers of Naours. Good afternoon to you both.
Hello.
Hello, Kelly.
How did you come across this story?
Well, it's interesting because we've been involved with the village of Vignacourt, which is right next door, and many people may know that it's the home of the Lost Diggers, a wonderful collection of photographs that were rediscovered in 2010. And right next door is Naours, and many people spoke about it, and while we've been doing different bits and pieces over there, we came across it and met the impressive Gilles Prilot, who is an archaeologist working with INRAP in France, and the story went on from there.
Tell us about walking into these caves for the first time and seeing these scrawlings from, men.
Well, people go there just because it's a local tourist destination. But for us, when we walked down there and we entered these deep, dark, cool caves, they were just cool on themselves. We weren't expecting to see any signatures. And somebody upstairs had said, listen, when you get to cavern number 10, have a close look at the walls. And sure enough, all across these walls are these beautiful scribbled signatures, men's little messages like, we shall never forget you, Australia will be here, merely a private. And they left their names, their regiment, battalion numbers, the places they were born. So we felt like we were home underneath the ground in France. It was truly amazing.
What sort of insight did it give you into the men who were there?
Oh, we think they were rebels. There's this one little place where there's like a cathedral down there. There are churches and everything because in medieval times people lived down there. Yeah. So there's this one place where there's this like cenotaph, and right at the very top, one of our soldiers has scribbled his names, and I can imagine that he would have been there with his mates, getting away from all of the noise and the terrible horrors that they had experienced with war on the ground, to get away, have fun, and still be an Aussie, and just to make sure that his mark was left there. It gives you shivers. It's really special.
Yeah, and Kelly, I think the other thing is that this is one of those stories. We all know about the battles that occurred. We know, it's the memorial of Passchendaele just this week, and this happened behind the lines. And this is where the Aussie soldiers, in their time of down, after they'd been through horrific battles or on their way to them, they came back to this little villages and around that area, and they went on a little excursion to these caves. And when they got there, they were dark. I don't know how they saw what they did. They had a pencil with them, and as larrikin Aussies did, they wrote their names on the caves, and 100 years later, they are still there.
Kepnock State High School in Bundaberg has become involved in piecing together this time in history. So how the heck did that happen?
It's an interesting story too, because one of the local high schools, Villa Bocage High School, that we became involved with in the Naours area, along with Gilles Prilot, the archaeologist, they were doing a study. So one of Gilles' projects was that he started to document all these names and all the pictures. They took beautiful high-definition pictures of them all to save them, because they are going to wear off at some stage. Yeah. But Villas Bocage the kids were doing it there. So we came back here and we had done some work with Vignacourt, with the Bundaberg region, because Vignacourt is now linked as a sister city with Bundaberg. And Kepnock State High School put their hand up and said they were interested in doing something. So the plan is that next year we're going to take a group of Kepnock kids over to France in the last year of the centennial celebrations, and they're going to work with Gilles as an archaeologist down in the caves and work with the French kids and discover some more things about some of these soldiers, and hopefully put together some more things that can be recorded in another book.
What are you finding the students are already taking from this adventure?
Well, as teachers ourselves, we realise that research is an important part of the Australian curriculum, and to bring back history, which has become an important part as well, is is so essential for the younger generation to realise that these boys were just like them or their older brother and were faced with these horrific battles and thought it was going to be an adventure. So for these school kids to go over there, they'll be homestaying for 2 weeks with the local French, which is what our boys did. They'll be going down into the caves, which is what our boys did, but they'll be continuing to the next stage where they'll research a particular soldier, gather all the information, take a picture of the signature, and our hope is to bring it back to the descendants here in Australia and present them with all of that information. So it's making history alive, and it's instilling in these kids to instill in their great-great-grandchildren that in 1916 there was a bunch of wonderful young men who went to these caves in the middle of France during wars and left a mark. That's telling still.
And one of the important things is that these soldiers' names, we all know again of some of the heroes that we hear about during the war. These guys are everyday guys.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, there was over 50,000 Australian soldiers who died and still have no burial sites within the Western Front, and many of them have their names written on these cave walls, and in some ways they are just, there's a tribute there to an everyday guy who went and did his duty.
It's a beautifully put together book. I mean, it's absolutely
The
gorgeous.
pictures are unbelievable,
Yeah.
Kelly. Dominic
Yes.
from INRAP has done an incredible job documenting the pictures, and as I said, one of the sad things is these have only really been on the radar for the last couple of years, and the reality is that more people that go through, the humidity and everything else that comes with that, the signatures are going to disappear over a period of time. So it's a piece of history. They wrote their names there, and no one knew what they were going to do afterwards. For some of them, it was the last thing that they wrote before they went off and were killed in some of the great battles of the First World War.
And it's interesting, isn't it, how a signature is one thing, but when you start reading about the stories of these men, even the ordinariness of their lives, sometimes that's what gets you most, is they were just blokes.
Yeah, and some of them were only there for months and were killed, and some were in Fromelles and Pozières, and some went on to Ypres. They went into the horrific battles, but for us, the joy was to bring them alive, so that those names actually have a story behind them.
Because the time has marched on and so much information has been lost, we're looking now at these stories, and if we can bring to life some everyday Australians that took part in this, that's a wonderful thing. There's great names in the book about some people. One of the guys was on Mawson's expedition to the Antarctica. There are others who did incredible things, but most of them, as I said, were everyday Joes, and that's about the Australian character as well, being an everyday Australian. They did their bit and their name is there and it needs to be recognised.
Give me the story of one of them who's really left a mark on you.
For me, one fellow in particular, Margetts, came from Tasmania, and he fought during the Battle of Pozières and was killed. And within the book here, we tell of the story from one of the men in his battalion who cried when he found him dead and wrote this glowing report about him and how he wasn't meant to die and he was a good fellow and why did this happen to him. When he died, they erected a cross above they buried him and put the cross above his body. And of course, Pozières was a horrible battle, and 3 or 4 days later, the battle came through and the cross was broken. A few weeks later, they erected another cross. It was a little larger to make sure that they didn't lose the spot where Margetts lay. And again, the battle came through and it disappeared. We were there this year, and last year for the centenary celebration of Pozières, the association called Pozières Remembers had erected a huge cross just to the left of the windmill side of Pozières with Margetts' name on it, and once again, even though his body isn't in that spot because his body has been lost, we remembered that man. And anyone who goes there now can read his name around the side. And it just, he was important. His men loved him, and we loved him when we stood and looked at his cross too.
Incredible stories, but you can't, as you wander through, and you almost feel like touching them because it's a real thing. This is a real person that was there 100 years ago and wrote their name there. And it's quite unbelievable when you're actually standing in front of them.
Yeah. Where can we get this book in Australia?
It's available anywhere now. It's at all good bookstores.
We're very excited. We keep,
We're very excited.
we keep going in and going, oh, that's
It's
it.
available in France also at the wonderful Naours gift shop,
yeah.
and hopefully there's a new museum opening in Vignacourt for next year, and it'll be there as well. But you can get it at all the good bookshops. I even think at the ABC shop.
All right.
QBD, Australian War Memorial.
The Australian War Memorial, yeah. But a great story, an untold story, and one that we should really know about.
The Silent Soldiers of Naours, that's spelled Naours, if you're looking it up. Messages from Beneath the Somme. Michael Fechner, Donna Fechner, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kelly.
Kelly.